بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه من والاه رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. جزاكم الله خير everyone for coming out. MashaAllah, you've come out in true ISBC fashion. You make me proud. I want to welcome my good friend Ustadh AbdelRahman Murphy once again to the ISBC, and I would ask that everyone make dua for him. He didn't have to come today. He's supposed to be in the area tomorrow. But he reached out and was like, hey, I'm going to be in the area. If I could come to ISBC and see ISBC, I haven't seen you guys in a long time, it'd be really awesome. So jazakallah khair for coming out. Today we're going to try to change up the usual of just having a talk, but we're going to have a conversation about Ramadan and preparing for Ramadan. So without further ado.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. How is everybody? Alhamdulillah. May 12th, still really cold in Boston. I don't understand. I'll just never understand. I'll never understand. Boston, how are you? How do you guys like your new Imam? MashaAllah. You guys are really blessed, MashaAllah. When I met Abdul-Malik, I think the first or second time I met you, you cut my hair. In Mecca, he lined me up. Because, you know, sometimes when you go for Umrah, you know, the brothers know you start to look like Wolverine a little bit. So, mashallah, he was there. And I didn't even know really, like, the caliber of his work and his talaba. When I say caliber of his work, I don't mean his barber work. I mean, like, his studies.
He did.
But, mashallah, just getting to know him and spending time with him whenever we visited Mecca. We were only there for a few days at a time. But you get to spend a little bit of time with somebody and you get to know them, you know, decently well, but every time we got to spend, it felt like Allah put more barakah in it, so we were able to hang. So when Yusufi and some of the team members were talking about a position to complement the senior Imam, you know, the idea of trying to ask Abdul-Malik if he would come through was like the first on a lot of our lists. And so it makes me so happy, alhamdulillah, to see him here. He already drives like a Boston person. You know, just cutting people off and giving them the shahada finger, but it's the wrong one, right? So he already drives like one. So I figured, you know, you guys have already made him part of your ahl, right? He's already part of your family. No, I'm just joking. He's like, I gotta take my kufi off when I drive. I'm like, why? He's like, you'll see. So no, he didn't do that. I'm making all this up. But anyways, it's good to be here, alhamdulillah, with everybody. Boston is like my home away from home. Although if Rondo didn't get injured, we definitely would have swept you in the playoffs. But that's okay. You know, Allah allows others to have success sometimes, you know. People who aren't used to it. You know, this is what happens, without cheating at least. You can't deflate basketballs. They don't bounce. That's the thing. All right? So, but see, I'm just prepping you, right? We're trying to get ready for Ramadan, so I need to, like, all of us need to get angry so that we can learn how to forgive. But yeah, so tonight, I mean, when Abdul-Malik and I were talking about, actually earlier today, we were having a conversation about Ramadan preparation. How many of you, like, you prepare for Ramadan, like, let's say, like, a few months in advance? Anyone
Don't answer.
Okay, yeah. Everyone raise your hand. They're like, I do. Like, we start to think about it. Today's khutbah, we were talking about, you know, this person who gave me a wedding invitation 1 year in advance. 1 year, you know, and the reason why this person gave me that card was because they were so excited. And it reminded me, I just couldn't help but, you know, feel reminded that when you're really excited for something, you know, you can't wait for it to get here, and you think about it every day. And so Ramadan is that time where the Sahaba were just so enamored, so in love with it, that they always wanted to, you know, hope and dream that they would get to that day so they could have 30 more days of the blessings of Ramadan. And so we kind of wanted to talk a little bit tonight about how to, like, spiritually prepare for Ramadan. We don't want to do, like, a lot of fiqh questions. Like, if you have any, that's fine. But that's not really the goal of tonight. The goal of tonight is more to talk about just general preparation. So what are some things that a person would do? For example, like, my wife and I, alhamdulillah, just had our first child 3 months ago. Make dua for him, Musa. He has an ear infection already. You know, I guess it just happens. But My wife and I were talking yesterday, and you're kind of a pro at this, so I'm going to ask you, or your wife is a pro, I should say, but what's it like when you go from Ramadan, for example, like as a bachelor or as a bachelorette? Like you're single and then you get married. Or you go from being a married couple to having a child. Like, how do you still maintain? Because I think a lot of us, we can all sort of agree that part of the power of Ramadan is the ability to sort of maybe on the weekends, stay a little bit later at the masjid, and maybe last 10 nights we come for qiyam at 2 in the morning. And sometimes that changes due to circumstances that are, shifting in your life. So how did you adjust from single Abdul-Malik to married Abdul-Malik with Ramadan? And how did you also adjust from couple Abdul-Malik and wife to now children of a couple kids? Like, how did you keep your focus?
I think that it just requires more preparation. Before single Abdul-Malik, I'm from the DMV, from DC metropolitan area originally, and there are a lot of smaller masajids. We don't really have like one big ISBCC. We have a bunch of small masajid with different ethnicities and different qurra. So what the single guys like to do is we like to masjid hop.
Yeah. Same in Chicago. We used to like go to different masajid because their imams were like, they had different styles even. So we would hop here, MEC, IFS, Yeah, that was definitely a single guy thing to do, for sure.
So when you're masjid hopping, you're not really considerate of anyone else but yourself. It's really like a nafsi, egotistical, where do I want to pray, who's the best, not how's the sister side, is it even convenient or conducive for women.
Interesting.
It's just like, where can I get that has a nice AC and nice recitation?
Yeah, and the nearest 24-hour Dunkin' Donuts.
I've never been a night owl, so that wasn't a problem for me. So once you're married, now you have to be considerate of someone else. It's not just about you anymore. It's about, is that place even conducive? So there's one place, they rent out a beautiful church every year, and the Muslims, they cover up all the crosses and everything, we pray there. But the sister side was just like a curtain. Like they put up this little wall, and it was like rinky-dink, and the women prayed on the side. My wife obviously wouldn't want to pray there. Or I'd have to be considerate of where she wanted to go with her family. So that's one thing.
See, and this is interesting because like, do you all agree that, mashallah, with like Sheikh Muhammad Nabil, for example, like your quality of prayer is better than, for example, like when you pray by yourself? Like when you hear a good recitation, does it help you? So what Imam Merchant is kind of mentioning here is kind of a very interesting jump, right? That a lot of times we tend to think that, well, in order to have the best experience, I need to go where the person is going to be the best reciter, or they're going to have the best quality prayer. But now he's saying that part of your deen as a responsible person, now that you've been married, is that you don't just consider yourself, but you also consider somebody else. And this is like the ultimate tension in religion, is that sometimes we tend to make a very like surface level religious decision, but it hinders and impacts so many other people that are around us that actually at a net level, you're negative. So for you come to, well, ISBCC is good for everybody, mashallah. ISBC, good for everyone, okay? ISBC.org. Okay, so you come to like a masjid and the imam is just out of this world. Like they somehow got Sheikh Sudais to come in for like a week, right? But like he said, the women's side is like a curtain and like it's like an oven. People are like baking brownies on the car. It's like so hot. But for you, you're like, look, this is my spirituality. I want to connect. But maybe your spouse, or let's say your sister, let's say you're not married, your mother, whoever, is like, no, it doesn't work for me. And then all of a sudden the argument be, well, you don't even have to pray. I have to come, right? And I've heard people say these kinds of things. And this is where spirituality takes a net loss. You see, Islam never, ever, ever will put in confrontation family and faith. It will never do that. If you look at all the examples, one time a man came to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and said, what? I came all the way, Ya Rasulullah, to be your companion. I left my parents crying. He was trying to brag. He was trying to show off to everybody, like, I'm so dedicated to be a Sahabi that I left my parents crying. And the Prophet ﷺ told him, go back and make them laugh like you made them cry. Go stay with them. Islam will never make in conflict family and faith, ever. And so if we are preparing in Ramadan, whether it's a married person, a newly married couple, right? Or a family member, like you're taking your mom or your sister or your daughter or anybody. These are things that you have to consider. And don't ever, ever, ever misconstrue them for being a sacrifice in faith. Because maybe if you go somewhere and maybe the imam, the recitation isn't your preference, right? We're not going to say it's not good because all recitation of Quran is good. But it's not your preference and your style. But maybe the dua of the person you brought with you, or their enjoyment, or their ability to pray is worth more than just your khushu'. Maybe their khushu' is worth more than yours. And with the sisters, usually it is, right? Because the guys are all checking their phones right now looking at the Wizards-Celtics game, right? At the score. You're not, mashallah. He turned it on airplane mode. Okay, right? But he has his friend tell him. But the point being is that maybe you accommodating for somebody else would actually take you to a higher spiritual station than you just being worried about yourself. Because now you're sharing your iman, right? So that's a really, really good point, mashallah. And I would also say that in general, Ramadan tends to be a time where no matter what is going on, family comes together, right? So it doesn't matter how busy you are. It doesn't matter how busy your family is. The iftar, the meal where we all break our fast, it is because the day is so intense. You stay away from food and drink. The iftar becomes the central focal point of the day, and you're able to talk to people in your home that maybe you don't talk to on a regular basis. Like you see your parents and you make time and you pray with them. We pray together. And interestingly enough, the month that we are most close to Allah, Ramadan, is the same month that we are closest to like people in our home or our friends and family in our community. There's a relationship there. You cannot be close to Allah alone. There's a reason why it's إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. It is you alone we worship. You alone we seek help from, right? Allah is talking in the plural because this religion is part of a cohort. If you are a Muslim, you're not alone. And so reinvigorating your family relationships, reinvigorating your community relationships. There's a lot of people who are like, well, I just want to pray Tarawih at home. They tell me, I'm just going to pray my Tarawih at home. That's fine, you can, it's not obligatory. But what are you missing out on? You're missing out on meeting people. You're missing out on the benefit, the barakah of more good deeds for you simply by showing up. Because a strong community that prays together is a fabric that holds us together, right? So one of the things about, this concept of being married or having this change in life is you really have to think about how you're going to use this month to build your family, not take away from it. Okay? But what about kids? That's a whole other...
Yeah, actually, so
You just bring them to the masjid for free babysitting, right?
No.
You're just like, go, right? And the kids, the boy, like a little cannonball just explodes into people and knocks them over.
So prior to working at the masjid, I actually had to take turns with my wife.
Okay.
We would take turns. So in Saudi, in the last 10 nights, there are 2 sets of tarawih. In the haram, there is all Ramadan. You have 2 sets. And then, so I would pray the first 8, and then she would pray the last 8. Or some days I would stay home with the kids and try to pray at home, and then while she would go out. And it was really just about working together, figuring out what was going to be best. Because as you mentioned, Ramadan is about family, not about me. And sometimes me praying at home, focusing on, making sure that my wife was comfortable and able to get out and do that, and she could pray with a sound peace of mind, everything was better for me than going to masjid.
Yeah, and making, what you just said reminds me of the ayah in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands people to make space, right? يَفْسَحِ اللَّهِ لَكُمْ. That if you make space for others, Allah will make space for you. There is this concept of sacrifice in our faith. Sacrificing for other people. It may not be what you want, but actually, one of my teachers said something very profound. When we asked him one time, we said, what if we pray and we don't feel our iman like shooting, right? What if we pray and we just don't feel anything? He said, don't worship a feeling, worship Allah. Like, don't get caught seeking the feeling, seek Allah. And a lot of times the reason why we find it difficult to sacrifice, like for example, like you're like, I had to stay home and my wife was gonna go, it was her turn. A lot of times the reason why we struggle with those decisions internally is because we feel like we are sacrificing something But in reality, Allah can be worshipped anywhere, right? And I know I just said join the community, but in this kind of scenario, sometimes you do have to make those decisions, right? And so don't think, well, if I don't go to the masjid, I'm not going to have the same experience. It's still Ramadan. It's still a time for dua. You don't have to necessarily sacrifice your kids for it. You can actually hold your kids while you pray. That's totally fine. I know a lot of people feel that, well, I don't want to bring them here because I don't want to disturb people. Let me talk to the non-parents for a second, because now that I'm a parent, I can say that. Hi, right? Before I used to give parenting advice, and everyone's just like, you'll see, right? But no, alhamdulillah, everything I said I learned from my teachers who are parents, but there is a responsibility on the community. There's a responsibility on everybody, especially those people who don't have kids, or your kids are really old. Your responsibility is to make parents of young children feel so welcome here that they never ever feel a harsh look or hear a harsh word. In fact, your responsibility is to go to them and thank them for bringing their family to the masjid and not make them regret walking through those doors. And I'm speaking particularly, I know the brothers, mashallah, are like, wait, children come to the masjid, right? We pray in like this sanctuary, we're like, alhamdulillah, right? But especially for the sisters and my dear respected aunties, don't forget, right? Especially those of you who have kids who are older, don't forget those days when you were the one who the kid was crying and everyone's looking at you with poison eyes, right? Be supportive of one another. See if you can help somebody. Imam Merchant told me a story yesterday where there was an emergency that came up, and he said that I make dua for this sister because I called her to ask for her assistance, and before I even had the chance to say my request, she goes, "You need help with the kids?" Right? That kind of empowerment is priceless. And when it happens at the masjid, not only are you making it a place where people feel comfortable, but guess what? Those kids love being here. SubhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ, like when he's praying and his grandchildren are climbing on his back. They're climbing on his back. He extends his sajda. He makes his sujood longer. When he finishes prayer, he apologizes to the companions and says, I didn't want to disturb their playtime. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine if someone was leading prayer and your kid jumped on the back? There'd be a janazah right afterwards, right? Like, it wouldn't be like, but in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, he extended his sajda so that they could continue playing on his back. And then he apologized, saying that, you know what? I didn't want to disturb their playtime. What do you think is the case of a young person? I remember Ramadan, man, like 10 years ago when I was in the masjid, we were talking in the back. We prayed our 8. When you're young, you're like, 8, it's the sunnah, right? But really you're like, 8, I'm lazy. That's really what you're saying, right? And it's just, obviously it is one opinion that it's the sunnah, but that's not always our intention. So we're sitting in the back talking after 8. We used to come in late too and do the second 8, or the last part 8 because it was shorter. So we were sitting in the I made Toba, okay? Leave me alone. Okay, so we would sit in the back and we would talk, right? Because Ramadan is a time where everyone feels energetic. Everyone feels hyped, right? Especially on weekends. People are just so excited. There's like a tangible buzz through the masjid. So you see people that you don't see, and you get to see when you're a kid, seeing your friends on a weeknight is like, what? Like, it's so exciting. So we're all sitting in the back of the masjid talking and hanging out, and there's an uncle who comes. I'm not picking on the uncles, although I kind of am, but he came and he basically told everybody, he's like, all the kids, he's like, all of you kids, get out and never come back. And my teacher who was there, one of my Islamic studies teachers, he went to the guy and he said, you better go to those kids and find them and bring them back. Because if they listen to you, you're in deep trouble. Because Allah will ask you, why did you tell people never to come back to my house? Was it your house? Are you the one who has the right to tell people never come back? Is this a country club? So when you hear noise, you're laughing, but subhanAllah, man, when you hear noise like kids, instead of feeling irritated because you can't concentrate, think about all the times you concentrated during the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl. When the Patriots came back and beat the Falcons. Think about how nothing could distract you, Your house is on fire. You're like, oh my God, they're doing it, right? Nothing could distract you. Think of your focus when food is brought out and it's 5 minutes till Maghrib. Your eyes are cooking the food. You're like, it's warming it up because you're so focused on it. So now you can't focus in prayer because a kid is running around having a good time? Get out of here, man. The lack of focus is in here. It has nothing to do with out here. It's in here. Because when you're in a conversation with somebody that you love, you don't even feel the temperature anymore. You're just like, so you're talking to Allah, you're asking Him to solve all your problems, you're asking Him to cure your diseases, you're asking Him to fix your deficiencies, and some kid's laughing in the back and you're like, get over it. Ali radiallahu anh one time got shot in the leg with an arrow. And when they tried to remove the arrow, he couldn't bear the pain. He said, hold on. They said, what? He goes, let me start praying. And then when I'm in my prayer, pull it out. He started praying. After he finished, he said, did you do it? He didn't even know that they did it. That's how focused he was. So if we are going to like bring up issues about, well, kids need to learn adab at the masjid. Okay, true. But if you started coming to the masjid when you're 30s, then you can give this 3-year-old a break, right? And let them develop an attachment to this place. Please, it makes our job easier, right? Honestly, I will be out of a job if all parents could just get their kids to love this masjid. And I will happily accept my resignation. And I'll go do something else. Interior design, okay? So, why are you laughing? The point being is that please, I'm sorry I kind of went off on a tangent there, but if we're going to make this Ramadan like truly a festive month where people celebrate, don't leave the youngsters out. Just because they're not, physically mature, maybe their books aren't open yet, whatever. Like we can come up with all the excuses we want. They need time to grow here. They need time. And part of that is going to require the running around. Part of that's going to require the balloons. Part of that's going to require the noise. And that's okay. That's fine. Right? Do you have any stories of your kids in the Haram in Mecca? Any funny stories?
I mean, Noah's back there running amok right now.
In his baby skinny jeans.
Oh my God.
So woke, mashallah.
Definitely the Haram. I just wanted to piggyback off what you were saying though. With that, married and unmarried people have to also focus on the child and the child's well-being. Because I know sometimes, even if it's not Ramadan, we have kids that come and they run through the ranks and just, and it's very distracting. Know that it doesn't break your salah to pick your kid up. It doesn't break your salah if you know your kid, or you possibly leaving salah just to pick your kid up. The comforting that we're giving our children, first of all, it should start at home. If your kids are seeing you praying at home and they're with you when you're praying, then how they act when they're seeing prayer in congregation is going to be very, very different. Mm-hmm. So that's to start off with. Second, if your kid is running amok, that's indicative of a lot of different things, why they need to run around, but make them feel comfortable. But by us teaching them, one, you're helping everyone else feel better, but you're also teaching them proper masjid etiquette. And it makes it easier for someone else when they're praying not to want to smack your child in salah.
or stick your leg out. That breaks your prayer though, by the way. In the Hanafi madhab, you can't trip a kid. That breaks your prayer. It's an unnecessary movement. You're done. Okay?
But about during Ramadan or kids running around, so alhamdulillah, bifadlillah, the last year before I left, I graduated in May, and I was able to walk to the Haram every single night and break our fast at the Haram. This was like our family thing. We would actually pray in our neighborhood masjid just so we can go walk the 25 minutes, break our fast there, pray Maghrib, and then walk home. And so this was like almost a year ago, obviously, and Noah was a little bit smaller, but we would just let him run. Just let him do him. As long as he was an eye shot, it was like, okay, bismillah. And there'd be times, or we give him responsibilities. Hey, you're cleaning up now, so take this bottle of water and go put in the trash way back there where the cafe is. And he's like, I can't see it. It's like right there, you'll find it, keep going. But it was one, to teach him responsibilities, and two, just to get used to dealing with people. Sometimes they'd ask like where's the trash can? So, I mean, yeah.
That's amazing. I literally cannot wait to take Musa to the masjid to pray with him, inshallah. There's a little funny story I have about the kid crying. So there was once a baby that was crying, and you know the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of his practices when he was leading prayer was that the companions noticed that whenever a child began to cry, he would speed it up, right, very quickly. So he would finish the salah very quickly when the child was crying. He would actually stop in whatever ayah he was reading, and he would immediately go into ruku. So one time we were praying at my masjid. I wasn't leading. I typically don't lead prayers at my masjid, but we were at my masjid, and it was a young hafiz who leads the prayer there. And so the brother next to me, his kid started crying. And you know, you notice it and you're just kind of like, oh, I hope the kid's okay. And this is after I had a child, so I began to learn the difference between like crying for attention and like crying for serious cry, right? And so this one was kind of more of like an attention cry. So, you know, I kind of ignored it and just, you know, once you have a kid also, crying is just no longer, it's like, you don't even hear it anymore, right? And so anyways, or it's not as annoying to you, I should say, because you understand they're just speaking a different language, right? It's a really annoying one, but they're just speaking it. So this guy, after prayer, I kind of told him, I was like, hey, you know that your prayer doesn't break if you want to pick the boy up. You can pick him up and hold him and comfort him, you know, even pat him. Your prayer doesn't break, right? You have concession to do that. And he goes, yeah, I let him cry because I wanted the Imam to hurry up and finish praying. And he goes, who hired this guy? Does he know the hadith? And I was like, look, it's an honor to finally meet you, shaitan. Right? I was like, I've heard so much about you. Right? I was like, this guy is too, mashallah. That's what he's probably a lawyer. He's probably a lawyer. No offense to lawyers, right? He gamed the system. He's like, I know this hadith, right? So that's a pretty funny story. It's a true story. I think he was half joking, though, inshallah. I think he was half joking. Deep down, he probably knew his kid was just kind of acting out a little bit. But so in summary, just for this section, I think we can say that this is like the family section. The responsibility of the parent, obviously, is to teach your kids etiquette. That's your responsibility. The responsibility of the community is to make sure that the parents don't feel uncomfortable, right? Or the kid doesn't feel scared. So it's not your job to teach the kid etiquette. It's your job to create a space where the parents can teach the kid etiquette, okay? And give them a chance to do so, inshallah ta'ala. But now let's go more to the personal side. Let's go more towards the personal side. So individually, let me ask you, I mean, this is your first year back in America. Welcome back. What do you expect Ramadan to be for you? And what kind of goals, just off the top of your head, are you hoping to sort of attain? And then inshallah, maybe we'll go around the room and take some sort of like suggestions, what goals you guys have for this year. Because it's really important to have goals. If you don't have goals, you don't know whether you're succeeding or you're failing. And you don't know how fast you're succeeding or how slow you are. You need to know what your end goal is so that you can gauge yourself, right, and pace yourself. So what are some goals that you have? And then I'll share mine.
One of them, family is very, very important to me. I'm just shooting from the hip because I didn't prepare these. Also, we're doing a survey to prepare a matrimonial service for the masjid. So we have 2 iPads that we're going to share. If you could just fill out the quick survey, it's anonymous, that'd be really beneficial. Jazakallah khair. So family is really, really important to me. And because I serve, I think that, and I love to serve, I can be consumed in serving. And I can forget about my wife and kids. And so one of my goals is to make sure going into Ramadan that my wife and my children and as a family, we have a meaningful experience and that she doesn't feel left out by me working long hours. Because obviously Ramadan is going to be a little bit more, but making sure the family feels everyone's benefiting from it, everyone's being enriched by it. So that's probably my number 1 goal. Number 2 is to read a bit more of Quran than I typically would. I usually, around halfway through, I fall off.
Okay.
So this year, the goal is to get past the halfway mark.
Okay.
And read a bit more. I'm not shooting to even finish the whole Quran. I just want to get a little bit further than I usually do.
Okay. That's good, mashallah. Incremental. My personal goal for this month is definitely to work on besides fasting, obviously, which all of us, typically do, unless you have an exception. I really want to work on my character. And one thing that I really want to work on this Ramadan is my thoughts. And what I mean by that is a lot of times we don't say the things that we think. And we kind of have these judgments that we make. And I am always so impressed when I meet someone who has a very strong, for example, benefit of the doubt, or they think of someone in such a positive light. You know, we live in an era where being critical and being cynical sometimes is seen as, you know, humorous, or it's socially rewarded or advantageous. The person is seen as being real, right? And a person who is always sort of, you know, understanding nuance and maybe giving people a second chance, that person is seen as being naive. And so it's almost like a negative thing. Like if you don't slam on somebody when you see them doing something that looks wrong, it's almost seen as like, wow, this person's weak, right? Wow, you don't get it. You're not mature enough to understand what's going on here. But whenever you read the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you find, you know, there's no indisputably that he was a person who understood that people sometimes have different circumstances. You know, there's a time where a man came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he told him, Ya Rasulullah, I've made a huge mistake. I committed a huge sin. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, what did you do? And he said, there was a woman who came next to my stall, like in the marketplace, and I found her to be so beautiful that I just kissed her, right? And the brothers are like, okay, step one, open a stall. No, right? No, not at all. Wrong. Step one is sign up for the matrimonial. Okay, so the Prophet Muhammad, like, it's very clear. This man is admitting. He's admitting. He's not, no one is telling on him. This is not an allegation. This is an admission, okay? Which, according to some rulings, an admission is worth 2 testimonies. Like, no one has to come and say, I saw you, because you're admitting it, right? Common sense. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ asks him like 4 follow-up questions. And this guy says, okay, you know, this is basically, it's harassment, it's assault, it's a big sin that I did, and I want to get the punishment for it. Okay? And the Prophet ﷺ says, hold on, answer me a few questions. Did you lose consciousness? And the guy goes, what? He's like, yeah, did you like fall asleep and your face just fell on her face, right? And the guy's like, no. And he's like, did you lose temporarily? Did you lose, you know, mental consciousness, like your sanity briefly? Did you just kind of like black out? And he goes, no. And he goes, did someone force you? Like, did someone like command you and like they were threatening you? He goes, no. What's the Prophet ﷺ doing? He's going through like a checklist of like the 70 excuses. And all of us would have been like, dude, he admitted it. But the way that he processes is so merciful to people that instead of just taking the first information and running with it, he needs to go through his, you know, like the quarterback does his reads. Like the Prophet ﷺ is going through his reads, right? And finally, the guy says, Ya Rasulullah, no, this is all on me. This is all on me, like I did this. So then at that moment, the adhan is called for Asr prayer. So they call the adhan, they go and they pray. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ turns around and he says, is that person who was talking to me before prayer, are they still here? Okay, let me ask you guys a question. Do you think the Prophet ﷺ is somebody that has a particularly bad memory? Do you think he would forget a face in like a few minutes? Like, do you think you could remember who was talking to you? If I came to you and talked to you before Isha, and then we prayed Isha, do you think you could find me? Where's Waldo, right? Where's Imam Murphy? Do you think you could? So do you think the Prophet ﷺ would be like, where is that guy? No, he knows. One of the commentaries says, this is the Prophet ﷺ trying to give this guy what? A way out. Like, scram, right? Like, leave quick. So then the guy raises his hand, and the Prophet ﷺ was like, oh my God. He's like, okay. So the guy's like, it's me. And then he goes, okay, did you pray with us? He's in line, dude. He goes, did you pray with us? He goes, yes. He goes, during your prayer, did you ask Allah to forgive you at any point in time? At any point in time. And the guy says, yeah. He goes, you've been forgiven. Go. Like, that is the frame of heart I yearn to have. Instead of seeing somebody walk into the masjid wearing something and thinking about them in a way that's like, what are you doing here? Which our community struggles with. I mean, when I say our community, I mean me, right? As a product of our community. Or thinking that you're more pious than somebody because of a certain thing, or thinking that you're better off than somebody because of wealth, right? Or you wear a certain brand name on your clothing, and so now you're like, somehow societally you're like more advantageous. These are thoughts that I just don't want to have anymore, right? And so this month, inshallah, I want to really focus on this aspect of humbling myself and working on it. You know, arrogance is a heck of a disease to break. And the way that you break arrogance, or the way that you've known you've broken it, is that you can see two people on opposite sides of whatever spectrum you want to lay out, and you treat them both the same, sincerely. That's the way the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was. You know what's so crazy? I've been reading the tafsir of Surah Yusuf lately, and Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, he does something so profound. When he's in the prison, spoiler alert, he goes to prison. Everyone's like, oh, come on, man. I didn't watch Yusuf, season 3. Okay, when he goes to prison, Joseph, on FX. So when he goes to prison, he begins talking to who? Who asks him to interpret a couple dreams? The prison mates, okay? So the prison mates. He begins telling them about Allah and talking to them about religion and about, you know, worshiping Allah alone and not having idols and stuff like that. And one of the commentaries, it was actually Mufti Shafi rahimahullah in his book Ma'riful Quran, he said, isn't it remarkable how Yusuf does not do a sort of social analysis on the people he's teaching about Islam? Like Lindsay Lohan holds the Quran and everyone loses their mind. Everyone's like, Allah did answer my dua, right? Like we hear of like a celebrity that converts to Islam and we just like lose it. We're just like, wow, right? Like invite them next fundraiser quickly. But there are prisons and prisons and prisons full of Muslims. And there's no compassion to like go and make sure that they have iftar, right? And I also am including myself in this. Like, why do we get excited at the prospect of a famous person mentioning Allah when there's hundreds of people who maybe don't have the socioeconomic status that they do, who love Allah, and we ignore them? So Yusuf alayhi salam is teaching these people who have no socioeconomic benefit. They have no social acumen. They have nothing. They're prisoners. And he's teaching them about Allah. Why? Because they're human beings. They have souls. And look at how Allah Ta'ala, look at his wisdom in that one of them becomes the key to the freedom of Yusuf. A prophet. The reason why is because Yusuf didn't have negative thoughts about these guys. He didn't prejudge them. Wait, before I teach you about Islam, what did you do? Why are you in here? There was none of that. He was like, oh, a human being wants to learn about goodness? Let me tell you about goodness. The only reason I'm here is because of Allah. Any good that you see in me is from Allah. Starts going off about Allah, Allah, Allah. And this guy, one of them becomes the key to his freedom from prison. Because he wasn't judgmental. So my goal this Ramadan is to kill my judgmentalism. I don't want to judge people anymore. Tattoos? Ahlan. Earrings? Ahlan. HIV? Ahlan. Come on in. This masjid's for everybody. Need help with paying rent? Ahlan. Don't know anything about Islam? Ahlan, come on in. Right? Without a single ounce of negativity or cynicism coming from my head. Inshallah, Ameen. It's tough. It is tough. But I hope that Allah grants me that. Inshallah ta'ala. That's my goal. Anyone else have any goals they want to share this Ramadan? We'll open this up to our community. What goals do you have that you can share? Inshallah.
I just want to piggyback on what Ustadh AbdelRahman was talking about. Why did they give me the mic that doesn't work?
We can trade.
Alhamdulillah, but by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I go to the prisons twice a month, to 2 different prisons. And it's incredibly remarkable every single time that I go. I always leave feeling better and more of a spiritual high than I did going in. Their insights, their outlook, their humility, everything is absolutely amazing all the time. We were trying to actually organize a community iftar for the brothers behind bars. Unfortunately, they only have limited hours that they can have visitors. So because of that, we aren't able to have an iftar, but I'm going next week, inshallah, and we're going to try to see if we can have people who actually come and visit during Ramadan. So just so that you know and everyone else knows, ISBCC, not even me, this wasn't my idea, this was Suzanne, Sister Haifa, they came up with this stuff, but we're trying to actually be engaged with the brothers. And there is one sister in Framingham who are behind bars and are Muslim. And their outlook on life is absolutely amazing. Some of them don't even know if they'll ever see what they see light or outside of the prison ever again. And they're engaging in tafsir. I give them homework, they're reading 3 different tafsir, 3 different types of tafsir, and then thinking more in depth to it themselves, trying to extract benefits. It's absolutely amazing. So be on the lookout for that, inshallah.
Inshallah. Inshallah. Anyone have any goals they want to share? Ramadan goals? Huh? Running.
In Ramadan.
Like running. Like physically running. Running before half an hour before iftar. Okay. Good. Running to iftar? Like,
biryani.
I heard they have fruit shot tonight. Okay. Nice. Mashallah. That's good. So let's go ahead and make that physical health, well-being, not gaining weight in Ramadan. Do you realize, like, shaitan leaves for a month, he comes back and you're fatter. He's like, wait, your pants don't fit anymore? Like, he's confused. He's like, I got locked up for a month and you ate too much? Like, wait a second. Right? Like, you know, Ibn Ata'illah actually says something really profound. He says that the human nafs, which can be translated a lot of different ways. It's tough sometimes between the different authors to kind of like find a common translation. But basically speaking, the human desire, the id in psychology, he says that it's actually worse than shaitan in some ways. Because he says that shaitan leaves you for a month and it still does stuff. And so whatever sin a person does during the month of Ramadan, he said that was shaitan's training 11 months of the year, and then he dipped and you kept going. And one of my teachers actually gave an example. He said that, you know how they train circus elephants to stay within the radius of the circus? They shackle their feet or their foot and they peg it in the ground. And the length of the chain only lets them walk to the extent of that radius. And they do that for X amount of time, so that when they remove the chain, when the show is on, because it would kill sales to see that elephant is being tortured. When they remove the chain, the elephant mentally, like cognitively, does not understand that it can go beyond what it's been doing, because this practice has been ingrained in its psyche. So shaitan is training us like that elephant. Look at this, scroll through this, say this, don't pray this. Like, he's been training us, right? These 11 months. And then in Ramadan, when he has to leave, he leaves. And some of those things, they disappear. Like, for example, a lot of us, like, alhamdulillah, we start to pray more frequently than we do outside of Ramadan. He said that's the sign that this sin was primarily from shaitan's influence. But the sin that literally does not move a centimeter, the sin that stays right there, he said that one's you. And he said that part of your nafs is actually worse than the influence of shaitan. So this understanding of, you know, how much we eat and things like that, we really have to battle that. We have to battle that, because apparently it's coming from within us, right? It's coming from within us. So we have to fight it, inshallah. And it's also staying within us, if you know what I mean, okay? Anyone else? Any goals besides running? Any sisters? Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Like so?
One of my goals this Ramadan is to memorize the 99 names of Allah.
That's a good one. MashaAllah. To memorize the 99 names of Allah. Why do you want to do that? Just curious.
Well, I'm actually a convert to Islam, and some sisters told me that when you memorize the 99 names of Allah, that Allah opens the gates to Jannah. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but I think it is.
Inshallah. Yeah, that's good. That's
So
amazing.
I think that's worth it.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, maybe. How about you do it? Let me know. No, I'm just kidding. No, no, absolutely. And with the names, right? With the names, it's the names and descriptions. And so, what's really profound about a name is that it tells you a lot about what the thing is. So, like, for example, we all know that this is a phone. We all know that it's an iPhone. Okay, and for those of you who have Android, may Allah forgive all of you. Ameen. Okay? So we all know that this is an iPhone, and that's its name. And because you know its name, you know so much about it. Like, for example, that it's manufactured by Apple, right? For example, that it's compatible with Macintosh. For example, that this is the iPhone 6S, right? So I'm not fancy, okay? And for example, that its camera is better, or it has a fingerprint sensor. You know certain things by knowing the name. So the name, right? It came from China, right? So you know where it was manufactured, right? So when you know the name of something, you're like intimately closer to it. Like none of us are like, oh, hey, what's that? You're like, a bottle? And it's like, oh, really? What is a bottle? You're like, I have no idea. I just know what it is, right? That's a very strange thing, to know the name of something and not know at least its function. So when you know the names of Allah, it sounds like a very kind of, like a very worksheet type thing to do. But every name you learn, you understand something more. For example, Allah's name Al-Ghafur, right? Al-Ghafur. What does Al-Ghafur mean? Huh? The forgiving. Can I show you something? Okay. Can I borrow your shamagh real quick? Okay. So Al-Ghafur means the forgiving, which is like the not literal, kind of like the contextual translation. The literal translation of ghafara means to cover something up. But what's interesting is that Allah is so generous in His forgiveness that even in the way He covers something up, there is mercy. It's not just mercy that He covers it up. There's mercy in the way He covers it up. I'll explain how this looks. What's this, guys? Bottle. What's a bottle? I don't know. Right now. Okay? This is a bottle. If I were to take this turban, and cover this bottle, and cover it like that, y'all would still be able to tell me what? There's something underneath here, right? Unless this turban has too much starch. You would tell me that there's something underneath here. Why? Because it's covering it. I can no longer see the item, but I know because the outline of the thing that's underneath, the turban has taken its shape. That's not ghafara. That's not the action of Al-Ghafur. The action of Al-Ghafur is when you take the bottle and you cover it completely like this. And I want you to imagine that you can't see underneath it. There's always that one kid like, oh, it's still there, right? Like, yeah, okay, thank you, I get it. The turban's not long enough. It's not regulation size. Okay, so it's covered like this, and you can't tell that there is a bottle underneath the table because it's covering it up. So to you and I, the covering of the sin does not leave even the trace of the sin. I want you to think of like when you're writing something with a pencil. You can tell, my mom and dad always used to say, do all of your work on another sheet of paper and then write your final answer on the homework. Why? Because you don't want there to be all these like eraser marks all over your homework, right? You want it to be clean when you turn it in. Because maybe you got the answer wrong, but because it's clean, the teacher will forgive you, right? And I was like, wow, thanks for the confidence, mom and dad, right? But the point being is that when there is cleanliness, when it's a clean covering, when it looks nice, and you can't even tell that there's a trace of a mistake, that gives you so much more confidence. When you meet someone that you've wronged, and they remind you that you've wronged them, I've forgiven you, but you remember that one time, huh? Right? It doesn't feel like forgiveness. But when you've wronged somebody, and you meet them, and in your heart you're saying, oh man, and you go to them and you say, hey, I'm really sorry about that one time. And with all sincerity, they go back to you and say, about what one time? I don't know what you're talking about. You're like, you remember the one time that I ate your samosa, there was one left, it was you and me, we were staring at it, right? And you're like, I don't even remember that. You're like, I don't even like samosas. What are you talking about, dude? Even though you know that they remember, the way that they make you feel is that it never happened. So Al-Ghafur is the one who forgives in a way that it never happened. That's why Allah tells the angels on the left shoulder, the one who writes all the sin, hold your pen for hours. One narration says 4, one says 6. Hold it for 6 hours. Why? Because my servant might repent, and if they do, I don't even want there to be an eraser mark on their book. That's mercy. That's Al-Ghafur. So when you learn the names of Allah, you're not just learning His names. You're learning so much more. That's a wonderful goal, mashallah. Thank you for the turban demonstration. Jazakallah khair. Anyone else have any goals before we open up to Q&A, inshallah? Okay. Let's open now to Q&A. So we'll take any questions, inshallah, that anyone has. Obviously, we just did a little bit of kind of like the introduction for our Ramadan prep and getting excited for it, inshallah. But if anyone has any questions at all about, whether, does this break my fast? Is this okay? This and this? Then we can try our best, inshallah. And if not, then we have Sheikh Yasser here as well to reference. Yeah, you have a question, bro? Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
It's not a question, it's more of comment. Like a lot of people remember their childhood. They remember a lot of the wall and something. So if we keep our children in the mosque when they grow up, they remember the mosque. That's first thing. The second comment is children try to do what their parents do. So if they see us praying, eventually they will pray with us. So that's why it's good to bring the children to mosque.
Absolutely. May Allah reward you. Jazakumullah khairan. See, we need more brothers like this. And also, he's right. Children copy what their parents do. So I'm going to need you parents to stop running in between the lines during prayer. Because it's really distracting us. I can handle a 3-year-old, but a 34-year-old sprinting down in the middle, it's just too much. But Jazakumullah khairan. No, he's absolutely right. There's a concept called modeling in psychology, right? Modeling, we all learned a little bit about it probably. Psych 101. Everyone's like, I want to do this for a living. Then they learn it. They look at earning potential. You're like, never mind, right? Okay? Even though I'm a psych major, or, master's. But the point being is we all model behavior, right? So we're going to pick it up, subconsciously or consciously. We're going to pick it up. So one of my teachers said that the children's eyes are better teachers than the tongue of the parents. They'll always learn more from what you do than what you say. And that concept of do as I say, not as I do, it's like not a thing. It's not a thing. It just makes you feel better but it's not a thing, right? The kid's like, yeah. I actually have a funny story about that. We were at a friend's house playing FIFA. Well, I wasn't playing because I'm an adult, but they were playing. And, no, I'm joking. And one of my friends who has a child, he didn't score, so he missed a shot, like it hit the post or something. And he just out loud just goes, man, and he said the F word. And his son was like, and his son just goes, and he says the F word as loud as possible. Like calling the adhan voice, but replacing the adhan with F word, right? So we're all like, oh Lord, how is this going to turn out? And my friend looks and he goes, no, because he knows that what's going to happen right away is his son's going to run downstairs into the ladies' area and be like, F, right? So he's like, no. He's like, no, you can't say that. And the kid goes, but why, Baba? And then he goes, well, because Baba made a mistake. And I was like, you know what? Props. Good job. You owned up to it. Baba made a mistake. That was not a nice thing. Baba didn't do a nice thing, and Baba is going to get in trouble. No ice cream for Baba, right? So he's trying to make it seem like it's not good. And then the kid goes, no, Baba. Anything you do, I will do. Even though he just got done telling him it was a mistake. Isn't that kind of scary? Like, he just said no ice cream, and the kid's like, it's worth it, right? Like, like he fully understood the consequences of his actions, and he's like, it doesn't matter, Dad. Modeling is too strong. Like, It's scary. It's really scary. So again, yeah, just those eyes are watching. They're watching. Very good. Any questions? Yes. You have a microphone. We'll get you a mic in a second.
I'm really curious how people deal with burnout during Ramadan. Like, it's really easy to get so excited going into it. I'm going to change all these things about myself. And then, like, 1 week in, losing that excitement. So, yeah. Yeah.
This is really, really important. So burnout during Ramadan is a thing. People feel, extremely excited, the days leading up to it, and then they kind of go to the masjid and they get their sort of, their iman rush, and then a few days in, maybe they had a tough day somewhere. It's just things are sort of fizzling out. And then by day like 13 or 14, they're like, man, I can't wait for Eid. And they start looking at Eid clothes online and like figuring out like invitations and stuff like that. So the general understanding of burnout in the religion is that it is the reason the Prophet ﷺ forbade extreme actions. So you have, for example, the three men who came to the house of the Prophet ﷺ and he wasn't home. And they told Aisha, radiallahu anha, they said, one of them said, I'm never going to eat, I'm always going to fast. One said, I'm never going to sleep, I'm always going to pray. And one said, I'm never going to get married, I'm just going to worship Allah all the time. So the Prophet ﷺ got home, and Aisha said, hey, these three guys came, and they said this. And the Prophet ﷺ felt it was so important that he said, somebody go get those three guys. So they came back to him, and the Prophet ﷺ, he explained to them, he said, you guys know, some days I fast, and some days I don't. Some nights I sleep a little bit in the night, and I pray a little bit. And I get married, and I still manage my worship. The concept of this was, if you do this, you will not last. This religion, Allah says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. This religion is predicated upon balance. And actually, the word balance in Arabic also means the height of something. Because the middle of the mountain is the highest point. So being a middle path is actually the most success in any endeavor. Being extremely stingy and being extremely liberal with finances are the two extremes. Allah says they will spend in between that, justly, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always tells us, be in the middle. So, how do we manifest this? Well, you know yourself. And you know where you're at. And you know last year what you accomplished, and last year what you didn't accomplish, and you know when you felt burnout. So your goal in Ramadan, amongst other goals, is to give yourself a path of balance, right? I'll give you sort of an idea. There's an educational theorist, his name is Vygotsky, and he has this thing called the zone of proximal development. It's actually a very interesting theory. I mean, it's pretty much, common sense, but the way he frames it's really cool. He says that whenever you're teaching somebody, you shouldn't put the thing so close that they can reach it while they're standing, and you shouldn't put the thing so far away that even when they jump, they can't reach it. He said every goal should be just out of the reach if a person is not jumping, but easily within grasp once they jump. The problem with burnout is that we put the goal way too far, and we jump, and we get tired because there's no reward, there's no sense of accomplishment, there's no sense of. And this is actually why a lot of places that do memorization of Quran, they start with the last juz because it gives a sense of accomplishment. So our understanding of burnout is that it's too much work, there's no tangible sense of accomplishment, I'm kind of feeling tired, I'm feeling exhausted, when's it going to end? Our plan thus has to remove those things. So give yourself a sense of accomplishment. Notice how Abdul-Malik, when he said, I want to read more Quran than I did last year, he didn't say, last year I got halfway through, this year I'm going to memorize the whole thing, right? Because he knows that after 3 days of trying and not getting there, he's going to give up on it all. So you look at your last year where you fell short and you say, can I be 1% better than last year? Can I be 1% better? Can I pray one more qiyam than last year? Last year I only prayed 10 nights of Taraweeh in the masjid. This year can I pray 12? Can I pray 15? Right? Give yourself tangible goals. And don't feel like you're selling yourself short. Because Islam is a marathon. It's a lifelong journey. It's not a yearly thing. right? That's my advice for burnout. It's a very real thing. Just make sure that every goal you put for yourself is within reach if you push yourself a little bit, inshallah. And also, get sleep. I don't think a lot of people realize how important sleep is. You need to get some sleep. Like, people push themselves so hard. Look, if you pray 6 rak'ah at the masjid, or 4, and you have to get up at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. for work, because Boston, you guys work, mashallah, so much, and you guys have like a long commute. Driving 3 miles takes 45 minutes, right? Okay? If you have to get up early, it's totally okay for you to go home. Especially in these nights when Tarawih starts at like 10 o'clock. Because don't throw away your whole Ramadan just to make sure you get 8 rak'ah the first night. Right? Go at your pace, inshallah. Go at your pace, inshallah. Any advice, Imam?
Start from now.
Momentum.
We have 2 weeks left. By starting from now, even if getting your body physically ready. First, going to the doctor, making sure that we can fast if we have any doubts about that. But also, maybe fasting till Dhuhr time. Next, in 3 days, fasting till Asr time. The week before, we're fasting a full day of fast. Just getting ourselves ready physically, cutting back on food a little bit. Sleeping 30 minutes less. If we're used to praying Fajr right before Dhuhr comes in, praying it a half an hour before that we usually do.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Training ourselves to be a little bit sleep deprived will be that much easier. We don't go in cold turkey as usual. That's what most of us do. Most of us go in Ramadan cold turkey. It takes us a week to 10 days, sometimes 15 days to get in our swing of things. Then we get our burnout. It's the last 10 nights. You just get like 5 days, like Bismillah. I'm gonna do as best I can. But by preparing a little bit, even if it's just these last 2 weeks, inshallah, it'll be that much easier.
But those last 10 nights, it's like the 29th afternoon. You're like, please, moon, please, right? Like, you're just like looking for it. They're like, inshallah, we'll have one more night of Tarawih. You're like, yes, excellent. I'm not tired at all, right? That's great advice, mashallah. And actually, without even realizing it, that's advice that I'm actually following. Like, I'm not eating as much during the day just to get my body ready for the fact that you're not going to be able just to go and graze in the kitchen, right? I know some of us, like, we just open up the fridge just to make sure everything's still there. It's like a part of our day. We're like, yep, okay, all right, yeah, all right, right? So I have to like get myself mentally prepared for the fact that like that's not going to be a part of my just day, right? And I have to do things a little bit differently. So I'm starting from now. Very good. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah. So the question is, there's an encouragement to give the benefit of the doubt, but there's also in Islam this injunction on enjoining good and forbidding evil, right? So basically, encouraging goodness and trying to discourage evil things. And there's also this concept of nasiha. There's a couple things. First is that the injunction, Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, says that enjoining good and forbidding evil is a personal injunction. It's not a general injunction. It's specific, not general. So he's saying that it is for you yourself and anyone who you have authority over. For example, if you're a parent, you have to teach your children, right? If you're a teacher, you have to teach your students. But it's not that a person walks up to anything that they see that's wrong in the world and they say, that's evil, that's good, keep it up, bad person. That's what Imam al-Ghazali says. He says that this is a complete and total misunderstanding, that you walk up to anything. Otherwise, there's a bunch of bars in Boston, let's get started. Let's just go knock on the door and say, evil. I'm forbidding evil. This is evil. Right? Thank you very much. ISBCC.org. Right? And then just keep going. And then we go to like random, like, thank you. Keep enjoying the good. Like, it's not even practical. It doesn't even make common sense, actually. Not to mention that in the Seerah, you don't find the Prophet ﷺ walking up to people saying like, you're wrong. In fact, there were many times where someone did something wrong in front of him, right in front of him, and he just said nothing. He just turned his cheek. So the concept that, and ultimately we have to understand that the notion that enjoining good and forbidding evil was an authoritative sort of almost police-like system, that came from a political interpretation that is not based on divine scripture. right? It's something that, it's an interpretation of how to apply that from a socio-political realm that's not based in divine scripture. It's just someone's interpretation, which Imam Ghazali disagrees with. So I might side with Imam G, rahimahullah, okay? The second thing is nasiha has its conditions. It's not general. Imam Ghazali talks about this in his text on the rights of brotherhood, which we covered here last year. It has its conditions. And one of those conditions is that if by giving the nasiha, the goal of the nasiha is pushed further away, you cannot give it. So if I'm trying to get someone to stop smoking, if by me giving them that advice, they develop resentment towards me, then I cannot give it. Because the goal shows me, right, my goal is being pushed further away. So nasiha is a very, very delicate thing. It's not like, oh, I know what is right, what is wrong. Let me go and advise this person. The question has to be, if I advise this person, am I the right one? Is this the right time? If I'm doing it, all of these things combined, will this person come closer to good, or will they want to push me away? If the answer is push me away, Imam Ghazali says you cannot give nasiha, because that is more about you proving your rightness, your correctness, than it is about helping them. I need to show them that I'm right. I need them to know that they're wrong. That's not nasiha. Nasiha is, I want to change the behavior of a person, even if I get zero credit. I want them just to be healthier, right? And there's a story of Imam Ali radiallahu anh, where one time he saw a person making wudu incorrectly, and instead of approaching the person, he asked the person to teach him how to make wudu. So instead of saying, you're doing it wrong, he told him, hey, can you teach me how to make wudu? Because that was the least threatening way of getting this man to rethink his wudu. But if he went to him and said, I'm Ali, redo your wudu, he might have done it, but he always would have had this sense of resentment towards Ali because he would have embarrassed him. So we have to be very creative in how we give nasiha. Giving nasiha is an art form. Absolutely, right? So there is no injunction communally for every Muslim to walk up to somebody and say, what you're doing is wrong. In fact, when people do it this way, it actually does nothing but harm the community. It does nothing but harm the community, and you don't find people doing this in the seerah at all. At all. So our goal is to enjoin good and forbid evil within our own spheres, and also to give advice to those who are comfortable enough with us to get it, and to be creative in ways that we give it. Give advice so it doesn't feel like advice, basically. Inshallah.
Just to also complement what he just said, the lens through which we should look through when we're giving advice should always be love and empathy. It shouldn't be, as Ustadh AbdelRahman mentioned, our own pursuing or pushing our own agenda or accomplishing what we think to know is right, removing ourselves from the equation, making it about him and not I. When you're thinking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's the goal, and helping the person get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that's a completely different metric to look through. Because when the metric is love, you're taking into consideration many, many more things. What are the ramifications of what I'm telling? What's the person's status right now? How will they receive what I'm telling them? What I'm telling them, could it push them further away? And if you're looking through that lens of love, empathy, focusing on Allah and not the self, then it's a completely different thing.
Also, some scholars have defined nahi al-munkar.
Yeah.
They define munkar as being public evil that is impacting people. Not just like me not praying. Like if I'm not praying, that's not impacting anybody. It's me not praying. If a person's doing something wrong, now if a person's like going and putting like, poison in someone's drink, that's public. It's affecting people, right? So you can go and stop them. But some have said that munkar specifically is like an evil that impacts others. It's not just like a personal deficiency, right, that I'm struggling with. Yeah. So there's a lot to talk about with that. Again, another thank you very much, English translation with political agenda.
It's almost time for the adhan. There are a few questions that were sent through with the number. Some of them are sort of general, don't really have anything specifically to do with what we're talking about tonight. So excuse me for not answering them. If you have a specific question you don't hear answered, please feel free to email me or Sheikh Yasser will try to get your answer. Well, one of them was, what if your parents and siblings are non-Muslim, plus you're not married at the time, so you never get to spend Ramadan with family. And this is something incredibly unfortunate that particularly either the convert community or the revert community, whatever adjective you'd like to use, or people who are transient, they're new to the area, have to go through. And it's incredibly difficult and hard thing to deal with. Alhamdulillah, on Wednesdays we're having iftar for new Muslims and for people who don't have family. We're working on something for Eid as well. But if you don't feel that, and that's something that the rest of the community, we should take into consideration. That's something we should understand. For people who have converted to Islam or have accepted Islam as their way of life, they don't have people to fast or to break their fast with. So what does that say about us? We should make sure that we are the family for them. That person you know who has accepted Islam, have you ever invited them over your house? Have you ever tried to break bread with them in the cafe? And when Ramadan is coming up, as it is, making sure that at least once we try to reach out. If we can't invite them over, being that much more loving and welcoming, because this is what people have to go through. And if unfortunately you're found in this case, then try to build a sense of camaraderie. Try to establish a sense of family and friends that you perhaps are going to eat out together. Perhaps you're going to come to the masjid and have iftar together. You're iftar hopping at the different colleges and universities, they're having iftar. But by having that camaraderie, that friendship together, then inshallah, it'll make it a little bit easier. Wallahu a'lam. One last one.
So a really good way for people to get to know people if they don't know anybody. Obviously, we do have a communal responsibility, but get involved. Get involved. Like, if you're struggling to meet people, it's unfortunate, but it is a reality that everyone is just so, like, I'm speaking for myself. I have a job, I have a family, I now have a child. It's not always the easiest thing for me to go and just spend time kind of, recreating at the masjid, making sure I meet everybody. But I know for certain if I'm working with something on somebody, or working with somebody on something, like we're volunteering, I'm gonna get to know them through things like communication and meetings and WhatsApp and stuff like that. So if you want to meet somebody and get to know people and build your sense of community, you can volunteer at the masjid. There's always opportunities, and you're gonna end up meeting so many people. Like, ISBCC probably has one of the most, mashallah, lit volunteer squads ever. Like I miss them. Like they're actually like friendly, fun. Everyone's very nice. So if you ever want to help out, you're bound to meet very socially cool people, like people that will become close friends, inshallah. So I would recommend, getting a little bit uncomfortable and going and seeing how you can help out, inshallah, and that would increase your chance of socializing with different people, inshallah.
With that, we'll close, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair, Ustadh Abdul-Rahman, for coming, blessing us with your presence. Sister Sajja wanted to let everyone know that she's compiling a calendar of local iftars. And if you're interested, contact her. I think Sister Russia is doing something very similar as well, so I think you guys could work together on that. That'd be awesome. But Jazakallah khair for coming out. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless you and your family and baby Musa, make him from the righteous awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and a coolness to you and your family's eye. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect you and your family from any hardship or any difficulty or any negativity in this life and the next. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow you to return home to your family safely. Also, Justice Ismail Lahir was in the hospital today. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remove any difficulties, any hardships, any sickness, any ailments that he may be suffering from. Allow him to leave the hospital, if he hasn't already, in a higher state of iman and physical nature than he was before. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to reach Ramadan in a higher and better state of iman than we were in the last year. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to finish our Ramadan, to leave Ramadan closer to him. وأقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم لسائر المسلمين واستغفروه وأتوب إليه.